The three minis, red, white and blue, tearing through Turin in The Italian Job, are about the most British thing ever committed to film. A British gang in British cars, nicking Italian gold, set to a brass band. It does not get more patriotic than that. So here is something that might spoil it slightly. That chase was very nearly filmed in Fiats. An Italian car giant offered the producers a small fortune to throw the minis out and put their cars in instead. Free cars, free stunt drivers, $50,000 in cash, and a Ferrari thrown in on top. The most British car chase in cinema history came within one phone call of being Italian. And the one company that should have fought hardest to stop it, Britain's own car maker, could not have cared less. This is how Fiat almost stole The Italian Job. The Italian Job arrived in cinemas in June 1969. A heist comedy, Michael Caine as Charlie Croker, fresh out of prison, planning to steal $4 million in gold from under the noses of the Turin police and the Italian mafia. The getaway plan was to jam the whole city into one enormous traffic jam and escape in 3 Mini Coopers, small enough to go where no police car could follow, down steps, through shopping arcades, over rooftops, and into the sewers. The Minis weren't an accident. The writer, Troy Kennedy Martin, was adamant from the start. Minis, he said, were classless, very fast, and sort of cheeky. They represented the new Britain, laddish, cheerful, self-confident, and did not take itself too seriously. The cars were the joke and the hero at the same time. Tiny British runabouts running rings around an entire Italian city, which is exactly why Fiat wanted them gone. Fiat was run by Gianni Agnelli, one of the most powerful industrialists in Europe, the man who effectively was the Italian motor industry. And Agnelli could see what this film was going to be worth. A glittering 2-hour advertisement set in his city, watched around the world. He just did not want it advertising someone else's cars. So he made the producer, Michael Deeley, an offer. Fiat would supply as many Fiat 500s as the production could possibly use, completely free. They would throw in their own professional stunt drivers, also free. They would pay a $50,000 fee on top. And, because Agnelli understood how to close a deal, he offered Deeley the personal gift of a Ferrari. All Deeley had to do was swap the Minis for Fiats. Deeley said no. He said no because the whole film only worked as a British story. British underdogs in British cars taking on Italy on Italy's own turf. Put the gang in Fiat 500s and you have Italians stealing from Italians. The patriotism, the cheek, the entire spine of the film, gone. Agnelli, to his enormous credit, read the script, understood the problem completely, and accepted it gracefully. So the most generous offer in the production came from the Italians, which makes what the British did next so much worse. You'd assume that BMC, the company that actually built the Mini, would have bitten Deeley's hand off. Here was a major motion picture about to turn their cheap little economy car into a global icon for nothing. As Deeley put it, you couldn't buy advertising like that. We presumed they'd be delighted. They were not delighted. They were, in Deeley's words, completely disinterested. After all that, BMC agreed to sell the production just 6 Mini Cooper S at trade price. 6. For everything else, the production had to go out and buy around 25 more Minis second-hand through, of all things, BMC's Swiss agent. The company wouldn't even throw in bonnet straps and fog lights. The greatest piece of free publicity in the company's history, and they treated it like a nuisance. And here's the detail that makes it almost tragic rather than just stupid. A few years earlier, Ford had been so baffled by how cheap the Mini was that they bought one, took it completely to pieces, and added up the cost of every component. Their conclusion was that BMC must have been losing around £30 on every single Mini they sold. Ford looked at those numbers, decided not to build a rival at all, and made the bigger, more profitable Cortina instead. So when BMC shrugged at a free film, it may not have been simple arrogance. It may have been a company so financially threadbare that it genuinely couldn't see the point of generosity, even when the generosity was being handed to it for free. That is the British motor industry of the late 60s in one anecdote. And now, the part that really twists the knife. That spectacular rooftop chase, the Minis flying across a banked track high above the city, was filmed on the roof of the Lingotto factory, Fiat's factory. One of the most extraordinary industrial buildings ever made, a 5-story plant where raw materials went in at the bottom. Cars were assembled floor by floor as they rose and emerged at the very top onto a 1.5-mile test track in the sky. Le Corbusier called it one of the most impressive spectacles industry had ever produced. Agnelli, the man whose own cars had just been turned away from the film, handed it over anyway. He let a rival's cars run riot across his crown jewel factory. As Michael Caine put it, despite the fact that our Minis were in direct competition with his Fiats, he let us film a chase on the test track on top of his Fiat factory in Turin. Agnelli even leaned on the city to let them choke Turin's streets for the traffic jam sequence. Let that sink in. The Italians offered free cars, free drivers, cash, a Ferrari, their landmark factory, and the keys to their city. The British sold them 6 Minis and wouldn't include the fog lights. What they got for the money was magic and chaos. The stunts were designed by the French wizard Rémy Julien, and they were genuinely dangerous. For the famous 60-foot rooftop leap, Deeley was so terrified that someone would die and the production would be dragged through the Italian courts that he quietly kept a car parked round the corner and a plane standing by at Turin airport. His plan, in his own words, was that if it had gone splat, he would have been straight out of the country and back in London rather than in an Italian jail. It was a Saturday when they shot it, and word had got round. 600 Fiat workers came in on their day off and climbed up onto the roof to watch, touching their medallions, crossing themselves as the Minis came hurtling towards the gap. The cars made the jump. One broke its suspension and one blew its engine, and nobody died. Collinson, the director, had promised the stunt team champagne if they survived. They got it. And one lovely bit of misdirection, that grimy sewer the Minis splashed through, supposedly deep under Turin. It was filmed in Coventry, the Sow Valley sewer in the English Midlands, the most Italian sequence in the film, shot a few miles from where the Minis were built. There is even a mythbuster in the machinery. For years, the story went that the hero cars had monstrous tuned engines. The man who actually supplied and drove them, David Salamone, set it straight. The engines were absolutely standard. Stripped interiors, big magnesium sump guards, roll bars, and otherwise just ordinary Cooper S cars thrashed within an inch of their lives. And thrashed they were. By the end of filming, around 16 of the Cooper spec cars and most of the cheaper doubles had been destroyed or wrecked beyond use, driven off rooftops, battered through tunnels, and, in the case of the ones loaded into that coach, quite literally crushed. The survivors met a sadder end. When the production wrapped, a handful of battered Minis were simply abandoned in a lockup in Turin and forgotten. No museum, no celebration, just left behind in Italy. Decades later, in the 2000s, a Mini enthusiast from Newcastle reportedly paid around £6,000 for boxes of remnants from that lockup, including original number plates and old logbooks, and pieced cars back together from the bones. Even the film's famous registration plates are a kind of ghost story. Those plates, the ones every Mini fan knows by heart, were future-dated props, never actually legally registered to the film cars at all. And the closest thing to a genuine survivor is a single white Cooper S, registration NOC 74F, one of the 6 BMC supplied. It turns up in a Dunlop promotional film in Trafalgar Square in 1970, and then it simply vanishes from the record. No one knows where it is. The most famous getaway cars in the world, and we cannot reliably point to a single complete survivor. The Italian Job wasn't even a hit everywhere. It cost around $3 million. It took about $9 or $10 million, and it did fine in Britain and Europe, but it flopped in America, where audiences didn't get the humor or that maddening cliffhanger ending. It took years and a lot of Sunday afternoon television to become the national treasure it is now. But the Mini became immortal. That film fixed it in the world's imagination forever. The plucky little British car that could outrun anything. It was, exactly as Deeley said, advertising you could never buy. And the company that built it. Within a few years, BMC had been swallowed into British Leyland. The great car industry collapse we have covered before on this channel, including strikes, mismanagement, and one crown jewel after another sold off or thrown away. Fiat is still here. BMC is long gone. And Michael Deeley, looking back, put it more sharply than any historian could. "I think," he said, "the continued existence of Fiat and the demise of BMC tells its own story about their behavior." An Italian company fought to get into the most British film ever made and lost. The British company that should have treasured its moment could not be bothered to show up. One of them is still building cars today. The other one is not. So the next time you watch those 3 Minis fly across that rooftop, remember, they were very nearly Fiat 500s. The roof they are flying over belongs to Fiat. The sewer is in Coventry, and the company that built the cars could not see what it had until it was far too late. Did your family ever own a classic Mini? And be honest, could you have turned down a free Ferrari? Let me know in the comments.